Karen sneered at the Handicap placard dangling from her rear-view mirror. "This will do nicely," she muttered, sliding her Mercedes into the prime spot. As she strutted towards the store, a man in a wheelchair watched helplessly, his eyes burning with rage. Little did Karen know, her selfish act was about to unravel her entire world. Karen breezed through the automatic doors, her stilettos clicking against the pristine tile. She waltzed towards the pharmacy, mentally calculating how much Adderall she could sweet-talk the doctor into prescribing this time. "Excuse me, ma'am," a voice called out. Karen turned to see a man in a motorized wheelchair approaching. "That spot is for disabled customers only." Karen scoffed. "And I am clearly disabled. Don't you see my placard?" She gestured dismissively towards her car. The man's jaw tightened. "That placard doesn't belong to you. I saw you park there." "Well, tough luck," Karen sneered. "I needed the spot, and I have it now. You can find another one." "That's not how this works," the man replied, his voice rising. "You're illegally parked, and I'm going to have to ask you to move your car." Karen rolled her eyes. "Or what? You're going to run me over with that thing." She let out a sharp, mocking laugh. The man's face flushed with anger. "Ma'am, I'm warning you." "Save it." Karen waved a hand. "I don't have time for this." She turned and continued towards the pharmacy, leaving the man fuming behind her. As Karen waited in line, her phone buzzed with a text from her husband, Brad. "Where are you? I thought we were meeting for lunch." Karen quickly typed a reply. "Running late. Had to take care of some things. Be there soon." She pocketed her phone, her mind already focused on her next prescription. When it was finally her turn, she flashed her best smile at the pharmacist. "Hi there. I was hoping you could help me refill my Adderall." Outside, the man in the wheelchair watched Karen's car, his hands gripping the armrests. After a few minutes, the pharmacy doors slid open, and Karen emerged, a small bag in hand. She headed straight for her car, not sparing a glance in his direction. The man took a deep breath, steeling himself. This was his chance. He maneuvered his wheelchair towards Karen's vehicle, positioning himself directly in front of the driver's side door. Karen approached her car, fumbling in her purse for her keys. As she looked up, she froze, her eyes widening in shock. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded. The man met her gaze, his expression grim. "I'm not letting you leave until the police arrive." Karen's face contorted with rage. "You can't do this. Move your chair, or I'll run you over." "Go ahead and try," the man challenged, his voice steady. "I dare you." Karen's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. "I'm calling the cops on you." The man watched her calmly. "I already did." As the sound of sirens filled the air, Karen's world began to crumble around her. Her selfish act had set in motion a chain of events she could never have imagined. The police cars pulled into the parking lot, their lights flashing. Karen's heart raced as two officers approached, their expressions stern. "Ma'am, we've received a report of an illegally parked vehicle in a handicap spot," one of the officers said, addressing the man in the wheelchair. "That's correct, officer," the man replied. "This woman parked her car in the spot, even though she doesn't have a valid handicap placard." The officers turned to Karen, who was already fumbling for an excuse. "There must be some mistake," she said, her voice shaky. "I have a placard. I swear. It's hanging from my rear-view mirror." The officer held up his hand. "I'm going to need to see that placard, ma'am." Karen reached into her car, retrieving the placard and handing it to the officer. He examined it closely, then shook his head. "This placard belongs to your mother, ma'am. It's not valid for you to use." Karen's eyes widened. "What? No, that can't be right. I've been using that placard for years." "Well, you're not authorized to use it," the officer stated firmly. "That's a misdemeanor offense." Karen's mind raced, desperately searching for a way out of this predicament. But I need that spot. I have a condition that requires me to park close to the entrance. The man in the wheelchair spoke up. I'm afraid that's not my problem, ma'am. You're breaking the law, and I'm not going to let you get away with it. The officers exchanged a glance, then turned back to Karen. Ma'am, we're going to have to ask you to move your vehicle. If you refuse, we'll have no choice but to issue you a citation and possibly make an arrest. Karen's face flushed with panic. You can't do that. Do you have any idea who I am? The officers remained unfazed. Ma'am, the law applies to everyone equally. Now, please move your car, or we'll be forced to take further action. Karen's hands trembled as she fumbled for her keys. She knew she had no choice but to comply. As she slid behind the wheel, the man in the wheelchair watched her with a grim satisfaction. This isn't over, Karen spat, glaring at him through the window. I wouldn't be so sure about that, the man replied, a small smile playing on his lips. With a defeated sigh, Karen maneuvered her car out of the handicap spot and found a nearby regular parking space. As she got out and headed towards the store, the officers followed close behind, their expression unreadable. Karen's mind raced, trying to come up with a plan. She couldn't believe this was happening. How dare that man interfere with her life? She had to find a way to get out of this, no matter what it took. As she approached the pharmacy, Karen saw Brad standing outside, a look of concern on his face. This was her chance to turn the tables. She quickened her pace, rushing towards him. Brad, she cried, her voice laced with panic. You have to help me. These officers are harassing me. Brad's eyes widened as Karen threw herself into his arms, sobbing. What's going on? He asked, bewildered. Karen pulled back, her eyes brimming with tears. That man in the wheelchair told the cops I was parked illegally, and now they're threatening to arrest me. Brad's gaze shifted to the officers, who were watching the scene unfold. Is this true? He asked, his brow furrowed. The officers nodded. Yes, sir. Your wife was parked in a handicapped spot without a valid placard. We're required by law to issue a citation in a case like this. Brad turned to Karen, his expression hardening. Karen, is that true? Karen hesitated, her mind racing. She couldn't let this ruin everything. She had to find a way to make this go away. Brad, please, she pleaded. You have to believe me. This is all a misunderstanding. I've been using that placard for years, and now they're trying to make me out to be a criminal. Brad's jaw tightened as he considered her words. The officers watched, waiting for his response. The tension in the air was palpable, and Karen knew her future, and her freedom, hung in the balance. Brad's eyes narrowed as he studied Karen's desperate expression. After a long, tense moment, he turned to the officers. I'm sorry, officers, but there must be some mistake. My wife has a valid handicap placard, and she uses it regularly. The officers exchanged a glance, then the first one spoke up. Sir, the placard your wife presented belongs to her mother. It's not authorized for her to use. Brad's brow furrowed. That can't be right. Karen's been using that placard for years. Well, sir, the law is clear, the officer replied. Using someone else's handicap placard without their presence is considered misuse and a chargeable offense. Karen seized the opportunity, clutching Brad's arm. Brad, please, you have to believe me. I didn't know I couldn't use the placard. I thought it was perfectly fine. Brad's expression softened as he looked down at his distraught wife. Honey, I know you wouldn't do anything intentionally wrong. But the officers are right. We need to follow the law. Karen's face fell, her eyes pleading. But Brad, you know how much I need that spot. I can't park far away. It's too difficult for me. The man in the wheelchair, who had been silently observing the exchange, spoke up. Ma'am, I understand your situation, but the law applies to everyone equally. You can't simply disregard the rules because it's inconvenient for you. Karen glared at him, her lips pressed into a thin line. "This has nothing to do with you. Stay out of it." The officer raised a hand, signaling for calm. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to move your vehicle to a regular parking spot. If you refuse, we'll have no choice but to issue you a citation and potentially arrest you." Karen's mind raced, desperately searching for a way out of this predicament. But as she looked into the unwavering gazes of the officers and the man in the wheelchair, she knew she had no choice. With a defeated sigh, she turned to Brad. "Fine. I'll move the car." She turned and stormed off towards her Mercedes, her heels clicking angrily against the pavement. As Karen slid behind the wheel, the man in the wheelchair wheeled himself closer to the car. "I hope this teaches you a lesson about respecting the rules and considering the needs of others," he said, his voice laced with a hint of triumph. Karen glared at him, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel. "This isn't over, you bastard," she hissed. "I'm going to make you pay for this." The man simply shook his head, an infuriating smile playing on his lips. "We'll see about that." Karen shifted the car into drive and pulled out of the handicap spot, her eyes narrowed in a silent promise of revenge. As she parked in a regular spot and got out, the officers approached her again. "Ma'am, we're going to need to issue you a citation for the misuse of a handicap placard," one of the officers said, his tone matter-of-fact. Karen's face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. I can't believe you're doing this to me." The officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, I understand this is frustrating, but the law is clear. You'll need to sign this citation and appear in court." Karen reluctantly signed the ticket, her hands trembling with rage. As she handed it back to the officer, she caught a glimpse of the man in the wheelchair watching her, a smug expression on his face. "Enjoy your victory while you can," Karen muttered under her breath. "Because I'm just getting started." With that, she turned and stormed off, leaving the officers and the man in the wheelchair behind. Brad hurried to catch up with her, a worried look on his face. "Karen, wait. Where are you going?" But Karen didn't slow her pace, her mind already whirring with a plan to exact her revenge. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Karen stalked through the parking lot, her mind racing with fury. How dare that man humiliate her like this? She was Karen Hastings, a respected member of the community. She wasn't going to let some lowly disabled person ruin her life. As Brad hurried to catch up, Karen quickened her pace, her heels clicking angrily against the pavement. "Karen, wait up," Brad called, his brow furrowed with concern. "What's going on? Why are you so upset?" Karen whirled around, her eyes blazing. That man in the wheelchair, Brad, he's the one who called the cops on me. Brad's eyes widened. "Wait, what? Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure," Karen snapped. "He stood there and watched as those officers humiliated me. And now I have a damn citation to deal with." Brad placed a hand on her arm, his expression softening. "Honey, I know you're upset, but you have to understand. The law is the law. You can't just ignore the rules because it's inconvenient for you." Karen's jaw tightened. "I don't care about the law, Brad. That man had no right to interfere with my life. He's going to pay for this." "Karen, you can't be serious," Brad said, his voice laced with concern. "What are you planning to do?" Karen's lips curved into a cold, calculated smile. "I'm going to make him regret the day he crossed me." Before Brad could respond, Karen turned on her heel and marched towards her car, her mind already whirring with a plan. As she slid behind the wheel, Karen's fingers drummed against the steering wheel, her thoughts racing. She needed to find out everything she could about this man. His name, his address, his weaknesses. Once she had that information, she would devise a plan to destroy him, to make him suffer the way she had. Karen's phone buzzed with a text from her mother, asking where she was. She quickly typed a reply, assuring her that she would be home for dinner. Her mother couldn't know about this, at least not yet, She needed to handle this on her own. With a deep breath, Karen started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, her eyes scanning the area for any sign of the man in the wheelchair. But he had disappeared, no doubt already gone to bask in his petty victory. Karen gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white. She wouldn't let him get away with this. She was going to make him pay, and she wouldn't stop until he was begging for mercy. As Karen drove, her mind churned with schemes and plots, each one more devious than the last. She would dig up dirt on him, find his weaknesses, and exploit them to the fullest. No one crossed Karen Hastings and got away with it. By the time she pulled into her driveway, Karen's expression had hardened into a mask of determination. She wasn't going to let this go. She was going to show that man exactly who he was dealing with. With a final glance in the rearview mirror, Karen got out of the car and headed towards the house, her mind already whirring with the next step of her plan. As Karen stormed into the house, Brad hurried to catch up, his expression etched with concern. "Karen, please, you need to calm down," he pleaded. "This isn't worth getting yourself into trouble over." Karen whirled around, her eyes blazing with fury. "Trouble? Brad, that man humiliated me in front of everyone. I'm not going to just let that slide." "But Karen, think about this rationally," Brad tried to reason. "What are you even planning to do?" Karen's lips curled into a cold smile. "I'm going to dig up everything I can about that bastard. And then, I'm going to make his life a living hell." Brad's brow furrowed. "You can't be serious. That's completely unethical, not to mention illegal." Karen waved a dismissive hand. "I don't care about ethics or the law. No one crosses me and gets away with it." "Karen, please," Brad pleaded. "This isn't the way to handle this. Let's just forget about it and move on." But Karen was already planning her next move, her mind racing with ideas. "I'm going to find out where he lives, and then I'll figure out a way to get back at him. Maybe I'll call the IRS and have them audit him, or I'll get his employer to fire him. The possibilities are endless." Brad's face paled. "Karen, you can't do that. That's completely unacceptable. I won't be a part of this." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Then don't be. But I'm going to do this, with or without your help." Brad shook his head, his expression distraught. "I can't let you do this, Karen. It's wrong, and it could land you in serious trouble." Karen's lips curled into a sneer. "Well, then I guess you're not the husband I thought you were." Brad's brow furrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means that if you can't support me in this, then you're not really on my side," Karen snapped. "I thought you'd have my back, but I guess I was wrong." Brad's shoulders slumped. "Karen, I'm trying to talk some sense into you. This isn't the way to handle this. There are better, legal ways to address the situation." Karen scoffed. "Legal? Since when have I ever cared about the law? I'm Karen Hastings, and I don't answer to anyone." Brad's face fell. "Karen, please, think about what you're saying. This could ruin everything we've built." Karen's expression hardened. Maybe it's time for a change then. She turned and headed towards the stairs, leaving Brad standing in the foyer, his heart heavy with worry. As Karen climbed the stairs, her mind was already whirring with plans. She was going to make that man pay, no matter what it took. And if Brad wasn't on board, then she would just have to handle this on her own. Once she reached her room, Karen closed the door and pulled out her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She was going to dig up every piece of information she could find on that wheelchair-bound bastard, and then she was going to use it to destroy him. Karen's eyes gleamed with a dangerous light as she began her search, determined to get the revenge she so desperately craved. She wasn't going to let anyone, not even her own husband, stand in her way. As Karen furiously tapped away at her laptop, Brad paced the foyer, his mind racing with worry. He knew Karen could be vindictive and unforgiving, but this was a whole new level of retaliation. He couldn't let her go through with this. The consequences could be disastrous, Not just for the man in the wheelchair, but for their entire family. Steeling his resolve, Brad climbed the stairs and approached Karen's bedroom door. He could hear the frantic clicking of her keyboard through the wood. Taking a deep breath, he knocked. "Karen, can we talk?" There was a momentary pause, then the door swung open. Karen stood there, her eyes narrowed. "What is it, Brad? I'm busy." Brad raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Honey, please, you need to stop this. Whatever you're planning, it's not worth it." Karen scoffed. "Not worth it? Brad, that man humiliated me in front of everyone. I can't just let that go." "I understand you're upset," Brad said gently, "but this isn't the way to handle it. You could get in serious trouble." "I don't care about the consequences," Karen snapped. "That man is going to pay for what he did." Brad's brow furrowed. "Karen, think about our family. Think about your reputation. Is this really worth risking everything?" Karen's expression softened for a moment, but the steely determination quickly returned. "You don't understand, Brad. This is personal. I have to make him pay." "But Karen, there are legal ways to address this," Brad pleaded. "We can file a complaint, or maybe even sue him. But what you're talking about is illegal and unethical." Karen's lips curled into a cold smile. "Since when have I ever cared about ethics, Brad? I'm going to do whatever it takes to get my revenge." Brad shook his head, his heart sinking. "I can't let you do this, Karen. I won't be a part of it." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Then stay out of my way. This is my fight, and I'm going to win it, with or without you." Before Brad could respond, Karen slammed the door in his face, locking him out. Brad stared at the closed door, his mind racing. He had to find a way to stop Karen before she did something they would both regret. Turning, Brad hurried downstairs and grabbed his car keys. He knew he had to act quickly, before Karen's obsession spiraled out of control. As he pulled out of the driveway, his mind was consumed with worry and uncertainty. Meanwhile, Karen had returned to her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She had managed to find the man's name, Michael Owens, and was now scouring the internet for any information she could use against him. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding, Michael," Karen muttered, her eyes narrowing as she delved deeper into her search. As she dug through public records and social media profiles, a wicked grin spread across her face. This was going to be easier than she thought. Michael Owens had a history of financial troubles, a messy divorce, and even a few minor run-ins with the law. "Perfect," Karen whispered, her fingers dancing across the keyboard as she began to formulate her plan of attack. She was going to make Michael Owens' life a living hell. She would start by reporting him to the IRS, claiming he was dodging his taxes. Then, she would contact his employer and spread rumors about his personal life, hoping to get him fired. And if that wasn't enough, she would find a way to discredit him in the eyes of the community, leaving him with nothing. Karen's heart raced with excitement as she imagined the sweet taste of revenge. Michael Owens had no idea what was coming his way. As Karen continued her relentless search, Brad raced through the streets, his mind consumed by worry. He had to find a way to stop Karen before she did something they would both regret. Pulling into the parking lot, Brad scanned the area, finally spotting the man in the wheelchair, Michael Owens, near the entrance of the store. Taking a deep breath, Brad approached him. "Excuse me, sir," Brad said, his voice laced with urgency. "I need to talk to you about my wife, Karen." Michael Owens turned, his expression guarded. "Your wife? Is this about the incident in the parking lot?" Brad nodded, his brow furrowed. "Yes, I'm afraid so. Karen is, well, she's not taking it very well. She's planning to retaliate against you, and I'm worried she's going to do something drastic." Michael's eyes widened. "Retaliate? What do you mean?" Brad ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "She's digging up everything she can find about you, and she's threatening to make your life a living hell. I'm afraid she's going to go to extreme lengths to get back at you." Michael's jaw tightened. "I see. Well, I can't say I'm surprised. Your wife seems like the type who doesn't take kindly to being challenged." Brad nodded solemnly. "That's exactly the problem. I've tried to reason with her, but she's hell-bent on revenge. I need your help to stop her before this gets out of hand." Michael studied Brad for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "What exactly did you have in mind?" Brad let out a relieved sigh. "I was hoping you might be willing to talk to her, to try and make her see reason. If she hears it directly from you, maybe she'll back off." Michael nodded slowly. "I can try, but I'm not sure how much good it will do. Your wife seems like a force to be reckoned with." "I know, and I'm sorry about that," Brad said, his voice heavy with worry. "But please, anything you can do to help would be greatly appreciated. I don't want this to spiral out of control." Michael considered Brad's request, then nodded. "All right, I'll give it a shot. Where can I find your wife?" Brad hesitated for a moment. "She's at home, probably still searching for information about you. I can take you there, if you're willing." Michael gave Brad a slight smile. "Lead the way." The two men headed back to Brad and Karen's house, both of them apprehensive about the confrontation that was about to unfold. As they pulled into the driveway, Brad's heart raced with uncertainty. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, turning to Michael. Michael took a deep breath. "No, but it's worth a try. I'll do my best to reason with her." Brad nodded, grateful for Michael's willingness to help. "Thank you. I really appreciate this." The two men stepped out of the car and approached the front door, both of them bracing themselves for the confrontation that was about to take place. As they reached the door, Brad paused, his hand hovering over the handle. "Just be careful, okay?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Michael nodded, his expression resolute. "I'll do my best." With that, Brad opened the door, and the two men stepped inside, ready to face the fury of Karen Hastings. As Brad and Michael entered the house, they were met with the sound of Karen's furious typing. Exchanging a wary glance, they made their way upstairs and paused outside her bedroom door. "Karen?" Brad called out, his voice hesitant. "There's someone here who'd like to speak with you." The typing abruptly stopped, and the door swung open. Karen's eyes narrowed as she caught sight of Michael in his wheelchair. "You?" she hissed, her fingers curling into fists. "What are you doing in my house?" Michael cleared his throat, his expression calm and measured. "Mrs. Hastings, I understand you're upset about the incident in the parking lot, but I'd like to talk to you about it, if you're willing." Karen scoffed, her lips curling into a sneer. "Talk? You've done enough talking, don't you think? Now get out of my house before I call the police." Brad stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Karen, please just hear him out. He's here to try and resolve this peacefully." Karen glared at Brad, her eyes filled with betrayal. "Resolve it? Brad, this man humiliated me in front of everyone. There's no way I'm going to just let that go." Michael cleared his throat again, drawing Karen's attention back to him. "Mrs. Hastings, I understand your anger, but what you're planning to do is only going to make the situation worse. Trust me, I know from experience how easy it is to let emotions cloud our judgment, but the path of revenge rarely leads to anything good." Karen's expression darkened. "You don't know anything about me or my judgment. I'm going to make you pay for what you've done, one way or another." "Karen, please," Brad interjected, his voice laced with desperation. "This isn't worth ruining our lives over. Think about our family, our reputation. Is this really how you want to handle this?" Karen's gaze flickered between the two men, her mind racing. A part of her knew that Brad was right, that her plans for revenge could have devastating consequences. But the burning anger within her refused to be extinguished. Michael leaned forward in his wheelchair, his eyes locked with Karen's. Mrs. Hastings, I can't undo what happened in the parking lot, but I can promise you that I never intended to humiliate you. I was simply trying to stand up for my rights as the law requires. I know that must be frustrating, but believe me when I say that I understand how difficult it can be to live with a disability. Karen's expression wavered, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. What do you mean? Michael sighed heavily. I wasn't born in this wheelchair, Mrs. Hastings. I was in an accident several years ago, and it's been a long and painful road to recovery. I know what it's like to feel powerless, to have your independence taken away. That's why I'm so passionate about defending my rights, because I don't want anyone else to experience the same loss of freedom that I've had to endure. Karen's eyes widened, and for a moment, the hard edge in her expression softened. Brad seized the opportunity, placing a gentle hand on her arm. Karen, don't you see? This isn't just about you. There are real people behind these laws, people who are struggling to maintain their dignity and independence. Maybe if you try to understand where Mr. Owens is coming from, you might be able to find a way to resolve this peacefully. Karen's gaze shifted between the two men, her mind in turmoil. She wanted to hate them, to unleash her wrath upon them, but something in Michael's words had struck a chord within her. After a long, tense silence, Karen finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to say. Michael offered her a small, understanding smile. That's okay, Mrs. Hastings. This isn't an easy thing to process. But I want you to know that I'm not your enemy. I'm just trying to live my life the best I can, just like you. Karen nodded slowly, her fingers uncurling from their tight fists. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have reacted the way I did. It was wrong of me to try and get back at you like that. Brad's expression softened, and he pulled Karen into a gentle embrace. I'm proud of you, Karen. This can't have been easy, but you did the right thing. As the trio stood there, the tension in the air slowly dissipated, replaced by a sense of understanding and reconciliation. Karen had finally let go of her thirst for revenge, realizing that true justice often comes not from retaliation, but from compassion and empathy. In the end, it was a hard-won lesson, but one that would ultimately lead Karen down a path of greater self-awareness and personal growth. The incident in the parking lot had been a catalyst for change, and as she looked to the future, Karen knew that she was stronger and wiser for having weathered the storm.